The day he yelled, "You chose the baby over me," Ethan Cole's world started collapsing without him realizing it. He was the youngest billionaire CEO in New York, powerful, arrogant, and emotionally untouchable. But love demands what power can't buy: time, patience, and heart. When his wife, Amelia, chose their newborn's safety over a business gala that would have sealed his empire's future, Ethan let his pride speak louder than his heart. 5 years later, the man who once thought emotions were a weakness now sits outside a children's hospital, clutching a drawing made by a little girl who has his eyes and his last name, the same baby he rejected, now fighting for her life. And for the first time, Ethan realizes love isn't something you control. It's something that breaks you open to rebuild you stronger. Ethan Cole had built empires out of ambition and sleepless nights. Every deal he signed, every tower that carried his name, all built from the same belief: emotions make you weak. Love was supposed to be an exception, but it turned out to be his greatest test. Amelia had once been his calm after chaos, the woman who taught him how to breathe between board meetings. But after the baby came, Ethan saw something he couldn't compete with: her love for someone else. That morning, he had thrown open the door to their penthouse nursery, his suit perfectly pressed, his tie the color of authority. "Amelia," he said coldly, "I told you the investors are waiting. I need you there." She looked up from the crib, eyes tired but soft. "Ethan, she has a fever. I can't leave her like this." His voice sharpened. "She'll be fine. You said you'd support me, remember? That's what marriage means." "No, Ethan," Amelia whispered, her voice trembling but firm. "Marriage means standing by each other, especially when one of us is small and fragile and can't ask for help." Ethan's jaw clenched. "So you're choosing her over me?" Tears shimmered in her eyes. "I'm choosing our daughter, Ethan." That sentence echoed through the penthouse like a verdict. He didn't reply. He just turned, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out, leaving behind his wife, his crying newborn, and something far more valuable than his company shares: his heart. For years, Ethan drowned in success and silence. His company, Cole Dynamics, became one of the world's biggest tech conglomerates. His name was printed on magazine covers, women adored him, competitors feared him, but the nights were long and empty. Every time he poured a drink in his penthouse, he'd catch himself staring at the small box on his desk. Amelia's last letter. He'd never opened it, maybe because he was afraid it wasn't filled with anger, but forgiveness. And forgiveness was something he didn't deserve. 5 years later, Ethan's phone buzzed while he was reviewing quarterly reports. The number was unfamiliar, but something made his heart hesitate before answering. "Mr. Cole," a woman's voice spoke. "This is Dr. Alina Gray from St. Luke's Children's Hospital. We have a patient here, a little girl named Leah Cole. I believe she's your daughter." The world around him froze. What?" he breathed. "She's very sick, sir. Your name is listed as the only emergency contact. Her mother, she's out of the country for a medical conference. We need your consent for immediate treatment." The phone almost slipped from his hand. He had no idea what to feel: shock, guilt, or the weight of 5 wasted years. He could hear his own heartbeat in the silence that followed. "I'm on my way," he finally said, his voice breaking for the first time in years. It took him 20 minutes to reach the hospital, but it felt like 20 years. When he walked through the glass doors, he wasn't a billionaire anymore, just a man terrified of what he might find. "Mr. Cole," the nurse pointed toward room 304. Through the small glass window, he saw her. A tiny girl lay on a hospital bed, her skin pale, 4 lines running into her small arm. Her hair was a soft chestnut brown, tied in 2 messy pigtails. And when he stepped inside, she opened her eyes exactly like his. "Hi," she whispered weakly, her voice barely audible. "Are you my dad?" He froze. His throat closed. Words refused to come. He nodded slowly, fighting the burn behind his eyes. "Yeah, I am." A small smile flickered on her lips. "Mommy said you were too busy helping people." His heart shattered into 1,000 regrets. He pulled a chair close, sitting beside her, holding her tiny hand in his. "I should have been helping you, sweetheart." She blinked sleepily. "It's okay. Mommy says we all learn when we're ready." For the first time in his life, Ethan Cole, the man who conquered the world, felt powerless. That night, as Leah slept, Ethan sat by her side, staring at the soft glow of the monitors. He finally took out his wallet and looked at the photo he'd kept hidden for years, Amelia holding their newborn. He whispered to himself, "I told her she chose the baby over me, but maybe she was right too." He pressed the photo to his chest, his voice breaking into a whisper. Please, just let me fix this. Let me be her father. Outside, the city lights blurred through his tears for once, not because of exhaustion, but because of hope. The soft beeping of the monitor echoed in the sterile hospital room. Ethan hadn't moved from his seat all night. He'd signed every form, spoken to every doctor, and watched every tiny movement Leah made, as if one blink away, she might vanish again. He was a man used to control. He controlled companies, markets, outcomes. But here, sitting beside a fragile child with his eyes and her mother's smile, he realized he couldn't control a heartbeat, not even one. Mr. Cole, the nurse whispered gently, you should rest. You've been here 12 hours. He shook his head. I'm not leaving her. The nurse smiled softly. She's lucky. Most fathers don't even show up. Her words hit him like a slap. Most fathers. He wasn't lucky. He was late. The door opened quietly that afternoon, and Ethan's breath caught. Amelia stood there. 5 years, and she looked almost the same, except for the quiet strength in her eyes and the weariness that only comes from raising a child alone. She froze when she saw him. Ethan. He rose slowly, guilt shadowing every movement. Amelia. The room filled with a silence heavy with memories. She's stable now, Amelia said after a pause, her tone professional but trembling. The doctors said it was an infection. She's responding to treatment. He nodded, eyes fixed on Leah's sleeping face. I didn't know she existed like this. Not really. Amelia's eyes flicked toward him, guarded. You had your chance to know her, Ethan. You had 5 years. I didn't get a call, he said quietly. You didn't want one. Her voice hardened. You made it clear that day, your company came first. I wasn't going to beg you to be a father. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. What excuse could justify his absence? None. All he could do was whisper, I was wrong. She looked at him, truly looked, and for a flicker of a second, the old Ethan she knew surfaced behind his tired eyes. But then she shook her head. It's not about me anymore. It's about her. He nodded, his jaw tightening. Then let me be here. Please. Amelia hesitated. For years she'd learned not to rely on him, but when she saw the way he held Leah's hand, his thumb tracing circles over her tiny fingers, something inside her softened. Fine, she said finally, but she doesn't know what happened between us. Don't make her pay for your regrets. I wouldn't dare. Ethan murmured. Days turned into weeks. Dad every morning. Ethan came to the hospital before sunrise, not as a CEO, but as a man learning how to be a father. He brought crayons, storybooks, and his awkward attempts at jokes. Leah giggled when he mispronounced words or made silly drawings. He'd never known laughter could feel like forgiveness sometimes. Amelia would stand in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. He could feel her gaze, cautious but curious. One evening, as the sun spilled gold through the blinds, Ethan walked to the hospital garden. Amelia was sitting on a bench, coffee in hand, watching the sunset. He sat beside her, not too close. She looks better, he said softly. Amelia nodded. She's strong. She always has been. She gets that from you. A silence stretched between them. Then Ethan said, You know, I used to think choosing love meant losing focus, but I was wrong. I didn't lose focus, I lost everything that mattered. Amelia looked down, her voice gentle but distant. You broke more than a heart, Ethan. You broke trust. You walked out when she needed you the most. He swallowed hard. I know. I see that now. But please, let me fix it. I don't care how long it takes. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't answer. She stood, brushing off her coat. Fixing isn't about time, Ethan. It's about truth. And with that, she walked back toward the hospital, leaving him under a sky painted in orange regret. Later that night, as Leah drifted to sleep, she whispered, Daddy. Ethan's heart tightened at the word. Yeah, sweetheart. Mommy says I got strong 'cause of her, but I think it's 'cause of both of you. He smiled through his tears. You might be right. She yawned, smiling faintly. You smell like work and sadness, Daddy. He laughed quietly, a sound halfway between joy and ache. I'll try to smell like pancakes next time, promise. Promise. And as her tiny hand curled around his, Ethan realized something he'd spent his life avoiding. Love wasn't a distraction. It was the reason to keep going. He whispered into the quiet room. Thank you for teaching me that, my little miracle. Ethan Cole's world had always run on schedules, deals, and deadlines, everything predictable, everything under control, until now. For the first time in years, he found himself rearranging his calendar around bedtime stories and blood test results. The man who once closed billion-dollar contracts was now memorizing Leah's favorite cartoon songs and learning how to braid a tiny ponytail badly. And yet, he'd never felt richer. But Amelia, she still kept her walls high, even as she watched him change. She refused to let herself believe it would last. One rainy afternoon, Ethan arrived at the hospital with coffee in one hand and a small gift bag in the other. Inside were 3 items: a small sketchbook, a box of crayons, and a keychain that said "Brave like Mommy." He found Amelia sitting by Leah's bed, reading softly. Her hair was slightly messy, her eyes tired, but to him, she looked like the heartbeat of that room. "You don't have to keep buying things, Ethan," she said without looking up. He sat down, setting the bag on the table. "I'm not buying forgiveness, just moments. I missed too many of them." She finally looked at him, and for a second, the ice cracked. "You're good at saying the right thing." "I used to be good at avoiding the right thing," he corrected quietly. Silence again, but not the cold one they used to share. This time, it felt like something new, fragile, almost hopeful. A week later, Amelia received an unexpected call from Ethan's assistant. "Ms. Hayes, Mr. Cole had to leave for a board emergency. The company's in crisis. They're threatening to remove him as CEO." Her chest tightened. He hadn't mentioned anything. For all his promises, was he slipping back into his old life already? That night, when Ethan finally returned to the hospital, his suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened. He looked exhausted. "Rough day?" she asked flatly. He nodded. "The board wants to cut our hospital donations, the same program that funds Leah's unit. I fought it." Amelia blinked. "You fought for that?" "I told them if they cut it, I'd resign. They didn't take it well." Her eyes widened. "You'd give up everything." He looked at Leah asleep in her bed, her small hand clutching a crayon. "I already lost everything once. I'm not doing it again." Something deep in her chest cracked open. She didn't say a word, but her silence spoke volumes. 2 days later, the press caught wind of Ethan's decision. Coal Industries CEO resigns over humanitarian dispute. The headlines read, "He became the talk of the city, half the world praising him, half calling him foolish." But when Amelia saw him arrive at the hospital that evening, dressed in jeans instead of a suit, holding pancakes in a paper bag, she couldn't stop herself from smiling. "You actually did it," she whispered. He shrugged lightly. "I told Leah I'd smell like pancakes, didn't I?" She laughed, really laughed for the first time in years. And in that laugh, Ethan heard the sound of everything he'd been fighting for. Weeks passed, Leah's health improved, and her energy returned. The day she was finally discharged, Ethan and Amelia stood side by side at the hospital doors, holding her hands. "Home," Leah said softly. "Can Daddy come to?" Amelia hesitated, and Ethan froze. He waited, then she sighed. "For dinner." One night, his smile was small, but it reached his eyes. "I'll bring dessert." That night, their tiny apartment smelled like warmth, pancakes, crayons, and laughter. Amelia watched Ethan sitting cross-legged on the floor, building a toy house with Leah. Every brick, every smile felt like a piece of something they'd lost and were slowly rebuilding. Later, after Leah fell asleep, Amelia stood by the window, watching the city lights. Ethan walked up beside her. "You know," she said softly, "5 years ago, I thought I'd never forgive you." He swallowed hard. "Do you?" She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, her eyes didn't hold anger. "Just truth. I think I already did. I just needed to see that you changed for real." Ethan exhaled shakily. "I didn't change for you, Amelia. I changed because losing you both showed me who I really was." She smiled faintly. "That's exactly why I can believe it." He reached out, hesitated, and she didn't pull away. Their fingers met between the soft light and the sound of rain, the distance of 5 years fading into one silent promise. Family first. Always. A year later, the morning sun spilled softly into the cozy suburban home where laughter had become a daily soundtrack. Ethan Cole, once the city's most feared CEO, was kneeling on the kitchen floor, hair messy, tie half on, trying to convince a 5-year-old to eat her breakfast. "Daddy, it's too green," Leah pouted, pushing the spinach omelet away. Ethan sighed dramatically. "Sweetheart, you promised. If I eat your broccoli, you eat your omelet." Amelia leaned against the doorway, watching the two of them argue like best friends. "You to make deals like stock traders," she teased. Ethan grinned, sliding a plate toward her. "Well, one of us used to be a billionaire, and the other already owns my entire heart." Amelia rolled her eyes, but she smiled, that soft, genuine smile that once existed only in memories. It had taken months, but their home was now filled with peace. not silence. Still, beneath the warmth, there were moments of doubt, moments when Amelia would wake in the night, her heart tight, remembering the loneliness of those 5 years. That afternoon, as Amelia got Leah ready for her first day of school, Ethan stood by the door with a camera. He adjusted the focus, trying not to get emotional. "Okay, give me your first day of school smile," he said. Leah, in her tiny blue uniform, grinned wide, missing front tooth and all. Amelia kneeled beside her for the picture, and Leah wrapped her arms around her mother's neck. "Mommy, I'm brave like you." Ethan's voice caught. He took the photo quickly before the moment made him tear up again. As they walked to the car, Leah looked up at him. "Daddy, will you come with us too?" Ethan hesitated, an old fear flickered in his chest. Would the other parents judge him? Would they whisper about the man who once abandoned his family for success? But Amelia saw the hesitation, took his hand, and said softly, "Of course he will. He's Daddy." And in that small, simple moment, everything inside him healed a little more. At the school gate, Leah clung to Amelia's hand nervously. Ethan bent down, brushing her hair back gently. "Hey, remember what we practiced?" Leah nodded. Deep breath, big smile, brave heart. He kissed her forehead. "That's my girl." As she ran toward her classroom, Amelia exhaled shakily. Her little girl, the baby she once raised alone, was growing up. Ethan slipped his arm around her shoulders. "She's got your strength," he murmured. Amelia leaned into him. "And your stubbornness." They laughed. And for a second, they weren't the people they used to be. They were just parents watching their child step into the world. Weeks passed. Ethan had turned down every corporate offer that came his way, choosing instead to start a foundation for single parents and children in hospitals named Leah's Light. Amelia helped him run it. Together, they became more than partners in love, they became partners in purpose. But what Amelia didn't know was that Ethan had been planning something for months. One quiet evening, after dinner, he called her outside. The backyard glowed with fairy lights, soft music playing in the background. On a small table sat an old hospital wristband, the same one Leah had worn years ago, carefully preserved inside a glass case. Amelia froze. "Ethan, what is this?" He smiled gently. "The night I found this wristband was the night I realized what really mattered. It was the night I stopped running from love." Her eyes glistened. He continued, voice trembling slightly. "I told you once that I wasn't meant to be a father. I was wrong. You and Leah made me one. The kind of man I always should have been. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making up for the years I wasted." Then he kneeled, and in his open palm, instead of a ring, lay 2 small silver bracelets engraved with, "Amelia and Leah, my forever home." Tears streamed down Amelia's cheeks. "Ethan," he looked up at her, eyes full of sincerity. "Marry me, Amelia Hayes. Not for the life we lost, but for the one we built." She covered her mouth, nodding through her tears. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." From behind the window, Leah squealed, clapping her tiny hands. "Mommy said yes, Daddy wins." Ethan laughed, standing up and wrapping both Amelia and Leah in his arms. In that single, perfect embrace, the past, all the pain, guilt, and distance, faded like a shadow. Later that night, as the 3 of them sat under the stars, Leah fell asleep in her mother's lap. Amelia leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. "You know, I used to think forgiveness was impossible." Ethan looked down at her. "What changed your mind?" She smiled softly. "You stopped asking for it, and started earning it." He kissed her forehead, whispering, "I'll never stop." And in that quiet, under the soft hum of fairy lights, their story came full circle, from broken hearts to a family reborn. Because love doesn't always come easy, but when it finally returns, it never leaves again.